keeps talking about pole shift. I mean, is that something you see coming, or should we be worried about these wars even more?
That's what the Navy sees coming. That's why the Navy has been conducting classified briefings since 1979. In these classified briefings, Michael, and you and I have talked about this before, they advise their sailors that when they retire, they should consider relocating to the Arkansas, Missouri Ozarks to be away from these oceans, because the oceans will come out of their basins. There's only one phenomenon that we're aware of that can cause that to happen worldwide, and that would be a pole shift. Now, a more localized event, say, for example, the east coast of North America, that could be caused by a different event. That would be a massive rock and dirt slide in the Canary Islands, which is another major concern for people on the east coast of North America. There's currently, as we speak, on September 13th, a massive swarm of earthquakes taking place in the Canary Islands that, by the way, the United States Geological Survey is blocking out. They're not publishing that swarm of earthquakes. So, yeah, really? a pole shift is a very clear and present danger, absolutely.
Yeah, because, you know, I've been checking into it, looking into it, and I get people who send me reports and email all the time, every day. And, you know, there's a lot of concern over the pickup in earthquakes and the volcanic activity. And, you know, I have people who are telling me they're getting visions that they should get off of the coast. And now we just had another asteroid that's passing by close to Earth. And, you know, is there any outside interference that could be helping along with this, or is this just an Earth cycle that's happening?
Well, it is an Earth cycle, and there is an outside influence. Both things are true. The outside influence, of course, is a 10th planet, also called Nibiru, the destroyer wormwood. As it gets deeper into our solar system, it causes more severe problems with volcanism, seismic activity, bizarre, strange weather events. The Gulf Stream stopping was initially precipitated by these events, and the final thing that stopped the Gulf Stream, of course, was the British petroleum oil spill, which stopped a very fragile and very much at-risk Gulf Stream in June 12, 2010. So yes, the outside influence is a 10th planet interacting with our planet and the sun and all the other planets as well.
I see, and I've been getting reports from people as well about strange smells in California.
Right, sulfur dioxide. Right, the salt in the sea. The government's trying to convince people it's dead fish. Well, a dead fish smell may carry a couple of miles at the most, but it's not going to carry 125, 150 miles, which is what the reports are saying.
Amazing. All right, so what do you think all this is going to start coming to a head? I've been hearing November. What do you think?
Well, there's, as far as the Earth changes, I'm not going to make any predictions about a date. We'll see incremental increases in the number and severity of all these events. And when it comes to man-made events, we're looking at the third week of October as a possible time for a contrived economic collapse. The communists that support Hussein Obama are very concerned that he won't win an election, and they may contrive an economic collapse that will lead to martial law and a calling off of the election to make sure that their man stays in office.
Yeah, I've been a little concerned about that myself. Do you think they'll also bring this on with more war in the Middle East?
Well, beginning day before yesterday, things really heated up dramatically in the Middle East, as we all know. Once again, certain people would like to see a war, and they apparently published this film knowing full well that once it got turned loose in the Middle East, it would drive these people absolutely bonkers crazy, because that's who they are. It's part of their religious belief to go bonkers crazy when somebody makes fun of Muhammad. So that's very predictable, and that's exactly what happened. When we're living the consequences of it now, the headlines on Drudge right now, Michael, are very disturbing, that the State Department had 48 hours notice before the embassy was attacked in Libya, and they did nothing. That's inexcusable. And once again, as we've known the past more than 30 years, the Marine Guards were unarmed. They had weapons but had no ammunition.
Wow. Now, some people think that was a setup, or, that maybe the United States set that up somehow just to have more excuses to go and maybe bomb more. What do you think?
Well, possible.
You think?
I mean, all these wars have been contrived going back to the Spanish-American War. So why not contrive one more on top of all the wars we've had since the 1890s with the Spanish-American War? The last time the U.S. military defended this country was the War of 1812. all these other wars have done nothing to defend the United States of America. They have enriched the bankers and caused a lot of death and misery, but none of these wars have defended the United States.
I would agree with you on that one, absolutely. And it's been all warmongering. I mean, all these wars in the Middle East are for their own personal agendas. I mean, there's no reason for us to be over there. I really don't believe Iran or Iraq was a threat, Syria or any of them. I think that they're picking on the little countries, trying to take out these leaders and put their puppets in.
Iran has a 1,000-year track record of not causing any harm to their neighbors. I mean, that's pretty commendable.
Yeah, it is.
There is a nuclear program in Iran, but it's not an Iranian nuclear program in Iran. It's a French, Chinese, and Russian nuclear program with French, Russian, and Chinese equipment, French, Russian, and Chinese technicians, and French, Russian, and Chinese technology and supplies. All three of those countries, by the way, are 3 of the 5 permanent members of the United Nations Security Council. And they could stop the French, Russian, and Chinese could stop the Iranian nuclear program in a heartbeat. Just order their people to get on planes and leave, and that'd be the end of it. But they haven't. And the last thing Russia and China wants is a bunch of crazy Iranian Muslims on their southern border with nuclear weapons. I mean, that's the last thing they want. Seriously.
Yeah.
So there's no evidence that the nuclear program in Iran is anything but the proper use of nuclear material and technology for peaceful purposes. There's no evidence of anything else. There's beliefs and fears that have no evidence, but that's all they are. It's beliefs and fears with no evidence behind them. Right.
That'd be like me fearing that my neighbor might come break in and kill me one night, so I better go over there and do it to him first. I mean,
right, well,
there's no logic in that.
That's a psychosis is all that is.
Yeah.
And what's being promoted about Iran is basically mass psychosis. We just it's kind of ironic. We invaded Iraq because of the non-existent nuclear weapons program that Saddam Hussein did not have, and it was so humiliating to see Colin Powell, General Powell, presenting the fabricated evidence to the United Nations and the world of and it was fabricated evidence of a non-existent nuclear program. That's why we went to war with that country. We went to war with Afghanistan because Osama bin Laden, there's no evidence connecting Osama bin Laden to anything to do with 9/11/01. But we went to war with that entire country because he allegedly was there. It turns out he wasn't even in the country. He was in Pakistan, our ally, Pakistan. And the compound that Osama bin Laden was living in was 3 football fields distance, about 300 yards from the main gate of the Pakistani equivalent of West Point. Not exactly a remote mountain village.
No, not at all. So, a lot more fabrication is what that is. I never thought that us killing Fred Flintstone was going to make us any safer. I never felt like he had anything to do with 9/11. There's a lot more to that story. I don't know if we'll ever get all the answers to it, but we know that that's been a good punching point, a nice fear monger that they've used to get people to say, "Oh yeah, the Patriot Act's great and the NDA bill is awesome." But, yeah, they're now understanding what it really means. I mean, we're not really a free country anymore. People aren't understanding that.
Right, and you're right, and the intrusions into people's lives and their personal space, like what's going on with the TSA, setting up checkpoints now in bus stations. They set up a checkpoint at a Mitt Romney rally in the last 24 hours. Now after you get through the TSA checkpoint at the airport and you buy your bottle of water inside the secure area, they want to check it then. There was some lady, this happened just a few days ago, you may have seen the story, some lady bought a bottle of water inside the secure area of the airport. The TSA people demanded that she check it, that they test it. She refused. She drank the water, and they wouldn't let her on the plane because she drank the water rather than let them check it. And then there was a recording of her confronting these people and she said, "You didn't let me on the plane because you don't like me, don't you? Didn't you?" And they basically said, "Yeah, that's right."
Yeah, and, you know, it's TSA. It's gotten out of hand, and I was telling the listeners, I've said it a few times, that what a perfect job that would be for some pervert who just hasn't got a record yet, who hasn't been arrested yet. I mean, just go become TSA member, and you can pick and choose who you want to feel up and who you want to harass and torment. I think it's horrible.
I went through the TSA checkpoint in St. Louis about 6 weeks ago, and I was escorting my grandson to the gate. I wasn't flying, so I put my boots in the little bucket and all that, and this is my first time I got to go to I was picked out to go to the naked body scanner. So I'm standing there. They say you got to put your arms up in the surrender position, the classic surrender position. So I do that, and then they say they ask me, "Are you wearing a chest brace?" I said, "No, I've got a double holster rig. I don't have a chest brace. I wear 2 holsters underneath my shirt." Well, that stopped everything, Michael. And the TSA guy calls over the supervisor and he whispers, "This man's wearing 2 holsters." And of course, I had no pistols. I left them in the car. And I said, "Would you come with me to the private screening room?" I said, "Sure, I'll come with you to the private screening room." And he brings another guy with him. And I had on a Western shirt with snaps instead of buttons. So I'd unsnap my shirt, take off the double holster rig, because I have a concealed carry permit, Michael, and I teach concealed carrying, of course, in Missouri. And I hand it to him, and he has his blue gloves on, and he checks out the holsters, and he hands it back to me and says, "Okay, you can go now." You know, and that's what they put people through. There's no rhyme or reason to it. Wearing holsters is not a prohibited item. It's just another piece of fabric, like any other piece of fabric. But it stopped the entire process and took up these 2 men's time for a good 10 minutes while they checked out my empty cloth holsters.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, I've heard stories about them. One old lady, a grandmother, they made her take off her diaper or something along those lines.
Yeah, the adult diaper she was wearing. How humiliating.
Yeah.
How absolutely humiliating. Live your whole life and be treated like that. But that's what we've come to. And the liberals in charge, the communists in charge in Washington, D.C., they just think it's so funny that us people out here, and us barefoot peasants, as I refer to myself and everybody else, that we put up with this. And of course, I know a number of people who absolutely refuse to fly commercial. I won't fly commercial unless I have absolutely no choice. I'm planning a trip right now, and I'll be driving 2 or 3 days, probably close to 3 days, to make my destination, just to avoid flying commercial.
And that's what I would do too. I've never been on an airplane yet, and now you can throw it out the window. No, I definitely won't. And they know this, and now they're starting to set up, like you said, at bus stations, and they want to start hitting the interstates as well, don't they?
There's talk about that. I'm not sure how they're going to pull that off. If they start stopping people on the interstate highway, there's going to be some problems. I can guarantee it, depending on what part of the country it is. And they may get away with it in Massachusetts, but you try that stuff in Kentucky or Tennessee or Texas, Oklahoma, that could cause some really serious problems. Wyoming.
No, I agree with you.
You know, you don't pull over these cowboys for no reason at all. I mean, you just don't do that. That is not a very wise thing to do.
No, and and that's just it. I mean, you got to wonder, when does it come to a point when people have absolutely had enough? I mean, even the ones who have been at the wheel, sleeping at the wheel, they've got to be waking up to this. And if they haven't, they will. And when is enough going to be enough? That's what I wonder.
Well, that's true. I mean, you get some guy out there who's maybe put in a double shift. He's dirt dog tired. He wants to get home, and he's being pulled over for no reason at all. That's a very dangerous situation, especially depending on what his mental attitude is. Say he put a double shift in at a factory where it's 105 degrees inside the factory, where they have a very hot process going on, and he's got a bad attitude before he gets pulled over. You're setting yourself up. There's nothing more dangerous, Michael, than a man who has no fear and knows that he's right.
Oh, you're absolutely right. And I could think of a few nights when I was driving home from work when, being harassed for no reason wouldn't have been a good idea.
Right.
So
right.
I totally understand. John, let me ask you this before we hit our break. Getting back to the Middle East just a little bit here. Israel seems to be really pushing hard to attack Iran. You think they're controlling all this?
It's possible. It's possible that they are. We're hearing lots of rumors. I haven't seen any evidence yet. There's, of course, this film that's enraging these people. It's being promoted as having been funded by Israelis or American Jews, I should say, which I don't know if that's true or not. But if it is, that's certainly fuel to the fire. What they're doing behind the scenes, I don't know. The Mossad is regarded within the intelligence community as being a very small and very good intelligence service. So what they're doing behind the scenes is difficult to say, Michael.
Absolutely. All right, John, hang on with me.
Thank you.
Are you on Monday through Friday?
Monday through Friday, 7 to 8 a.m. Central Time, 8 to 9 Eastern on Republic Broadcast.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I know you've got a lot of people who follow you because, I get emails all the time from a couple of guys who are constantly sending me links. They're keeping track of everything John Moore says. So
yeah, there are. It's about 10 to 15,000 people a day.
Hey, that's great. That's really great. And
with modern technology, we can actually track them because the majority of people don't listen live; they listen on YouTube.
Right. Yeah, you're right. The one show that you and I have done has gotten over 200,000 views already. So
amazing.
Yeah.
250,000 people. That's amazing.
It is. It is amazing. And if we had to rely on, say, network radio like AM or FM, I mean, these messages that we get would never get out, would they?
No, they would not. That wouldn't be allowed. I've been on Fox News nationwide twice talking about terrorism, and when it came time, I was working with this young female producer in New York, and she says, well, John, what do you want to do our next show on? So I said, let's do a show on the feel-good, make-believe security at these airports. And so she says, I'll talk to my boss and get back with you. So she calls me back the next day, and she says, John, we can't do that. It's too scary.
Yeah.
And that's all it is. Feel-good, make-believe security. There was one of these pilots, one of these commercial pilots. He was authorized to carry a firearm, which I was one of the behind-the-scenes advisors on that. But he went public with what's common knowledge in airport security, and that's the people that work out there on the flight line. They don't go through security checkpoints. They have a magnetic card that they swipe and go through a side door by themselves without going through security at all. And when he pointed that out, the TSA and the government got mad at him, and they took his authority to carry his pistol on the plane away from him.
Wow.
And all he was doing was pointing out, it's a well-known fact that the flight line workers don't go through the security checkpoints like the pilots and the crew do.
Yeah, and those scanners, I don't care what they say, you get people who are flying constantly all week long, and they have to keep going through those scanners. I mean, once is too many times, but, hundreds of times a month maybe, not good.
No, the radiation is not healthy and is not a good thing. And frequent flyers have an issue with that. And of course, the crews, they're already getting radiated because of the high altitudes they fly. They pick up a big dose of radiation in that manner. And I don't know, but I would suspect there's a very high likelihood that these people would be getting a larger incidence of cancers.
Right. Now, as we move closer to November and December, and, we know all the things that could happen. We know, the things that are happening. Why don't we tell people a little bit of what they should do, maybe to prepare themselves? And again, folks, we're not fear-mongering you. We're just simply talking about the things that are happening right now.
Absolutely.
What should people be concentrating on?
Well, the first and most important thing, Michael, is for everybody to get their spiritual house in order. That's the most important thing anybody can do for themselves. Moving on from there, we hear a lot about, getting your water stored up in food, but you need skills. And the two skills that will be in biggest demand and shortest supply are emergency medical treatment skills and the skills of a ham radio operator. Whether your group is 4 or 5 people or 400 or 500 people, those two skills will be in biggest demand and shortest supply. In my community where I live, we started a preparedness program for the community, working with the mayor, the chief of police, the fire chief. One of the first things we did, Michael, was identify everybody in the community who had any kind of medical skills at all. The nurses, EMTs, paramedics, doctors, dentists, medical technicians, dental hygienists, anyone and everyone with any kind of medical-related skill. We identified them, we approached them, and we asked them if they would agree to help out during a crisis. And without exception, everyone did. We also identified all the ham radio operators in our community and approached them as well, and they were all agreeable to helping out in a crisis. So work on getting those two skills, getting the emergency medical treatment skills and get ham radio skills. Obviously and clearly, you should have a good quality gravity feed water filter, something that does not take electricity, or 40 psi pressure, to make things happen. You should have a stock of food. I recommend 2 years worth. At least get a month's worth. The government's only suggesting, I think, 2 weeks worth. A 1 month supply is a good start. And once you get that basic 1 month supply, just build onto it and add on to it as finances allow. If you have any medical conditions that require pharmaceutical products, a stockpile of those pharmaceutical products would be an excellent idea. And if you have to pay for it out of your pocket, well, then go ahead and do it. I know that insurance is not going to pay for more medications than what you need on a monthly basis, but bite the bullet and get what you need. If you need pharmaceutical products to stay alive, then get a several-month supply. Whatever it takes to do that, you should do that. An event like an electromagnetic pulse, Michael, would shut down this country and bring it to its knees. And in 4 to 6 weeks, every person who requires a pharmaceutical product to stay alive, almost all of them are going to be dead. 8% of the adults in this country have diabetes. And I don't know how many of them require insulin to stay alive. I'm sure it's a substantial percentage of those. All those people, with very few exceptions, will all be dead in 4 to 6 weeks. And there's other pharmaceutical products, like, for example, pharmaceutical products that are anti-rejection medicines. If you have a kidney transplant, any kind of organ transplant, heart transplant, these people have to take special medications to keep the body from rejecting that transplanted organ. If you're cut off from access to those supplies, you're going to die. So it's a tough wake-up call, Michael. But people need to be aware of this. They need to take action, and they need to do it now while they can, while we have what appears to be the luxury of time. The luxury of time could go away in 5 weeks. If this economic collapse becomes a reality, it could get real tough real quick. So a word to the wise is to pay heed, get prepared while they can, and do what they can within their own abilities, whether it's everybody has financial and physical limitations, but work within those limitations and do what you can, Michael.
That's right. And I got a question from one of the chat rooms. They asked, when would this Planet X, when would it make its closest pass-by to Earth? Many are reporting that they could see it from the southern hemisphere, and I imagine if it could be seen, then it must be on its way. So right.
Well, chances are some of those reports are true. There's a Brazilian astronomer, I can't tell you his name as I don't recall off the top of my head, but a Brazilian astronomer who's connected to a government observatory who's gone public with saying he's seeing it right now. Brazil's kind of at odds with the New World Order, so it doesn't surprise me too much that one of the government-sponsored astronomers would be going public like that. Having a date should not change anything. And I use the example, Michael, of the Navy veterans. The Navy veterans weren't even told about Planet X. They were told the oceans would come out of their basins, and they were told that when they retire, that they should set up a self-sufficient lifestyle. The place you want to be, Michael, is where you don't need to think about or worry about any specific date. There's no good result from that. That only can cause heartache and ulcers. The place you want to be is prepared, where no matter what happens, you've done as much as humanly possible to deal with it. And you don't have to worry about a date, anguish over a date, think about a date. It's simply not something you need to do because you've got your preparation squared away. That's a good place to be emotionally and spiritually, Michael.
Yeah, I agree with you. Definitely should be prepared in some way. And I tell people all the time, even if you don't believe that there's going to be a Planet X or even a World War III or any of that, you should still be prepared because the way the weather's going and the earthquakes and stuff, you never know when your area is going to be marked for something like that. So you want to be prepared anyways.
Absolutely. Absolutely. As my friend Professor McCanny said to a response to a lady, she wanted him to tell her when the closest passage of Planet X would be. And his response was, well, ma'am, once I give you this date, what are you going to do? Buy another case of tuna fish? I mean, seriously. What would you do? You should not. What are you going to do that you're not doing anyway? Once you understand and comprehend that this is real, like all the Navy veterans understand that it's real, then you take action and you change your lifestyle to be in comportment with your understanding, as opposed to at odds with what you understand. If you're not doing everything you can be doing, your actions are at odds with your beliefs. That's not a good place to be, Michael.
No, it's absolutely not. And what about the sun? A lot of activity with the sun. Is this because it's being affected?
You're right. The Department of Homeland Security, I'm glad you mentioned that. I haven't talked about this for a while. The Department of Homeland Security is very concerned that a major solar event could take place in the next 5 to 6 months, resulting in a solar flare that would be the natural equivalent of electromagnetic pulse attack, what might be called a Carrington event. They're very concerned that another Carrington event would happen. The last time this happened was 1859, just before the American Civil War, and that solar flare was so powerful that it started fires in telegraph offices. We had no nationwide power grid or any power grid at all, but we did have a nationwide telegraph service. Those telegraph wires, Michael, acted as antenna to pick up that energy and direct it into the telegraph offices, and it did start fires. So the Homeland Security is very concerned this could happen in the next 6 months, and people should be aware of this. There's an excellent book at my website, Michael, that people can download or read at no charge. It's written by a commission of scientists, engineers and scientists appointed by the government to look into the effects of electromagnetic pulse attack. And the first 60 pages is the most important. It's about 189 pages or so. But that first 60 pages is the most critical. That will tell you what you need to know, what you need to get prepared for. It will, if it would happen, either a Carrington event from the sun or a man-made weapon shot off in space, it would bring this country to its knees, and you and I would never live long enough, Michael, to see this country become what we call normal now. It simply would not happen in our lifetimes. It would be devastating, absolutely devastating, and bring this country to its knees.
Absolutely, and if the New World Order got their way, they would probably round guys like yourself and myself up first and make sure that we were put away. So, they don't like anybody getting woken up. They don't like this information getting out. And, they've got a lot of, I call them agents that they put out here on the Internet that put out disinformation to try to make, guys like yourself look crazy, when we talk about these things.
That's well known. That's well known and well documented that there's disinformation, trolls out there trolling, and disinformation websites, and absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. So now in the last, we got about another 15 minutes or so. What are you looking at right now? I mean, what is in your radar right now? What type of things are you making sure you're keeping up with as far as your audience goes and such?
Right. We're paying real careful attention to what's going on with the Middle East. We're watching these Russian Spetsnaz, special forces troops that are in this country. We've now confirmed that the Russian special forces are violating the protocols that they agreed to for communications, and they're using encrypted communications to communicate with Mother Russia. And they agreed before they came here that they would not do that. That's very serious stuff, very serious. The numbers vary wildly from hundreds of Russian Spetsnaz to thousands. I don't know that the numbers matter very much. 500 or 600 of these men could cause great problems, huge problems for our country if they put their mind to it. We're watching these flu viruses. There's about 4 flu viruses right now that appear to be biological weapons that are loose in this country. They may be demanding people get immunizations, which, of course, I'm not going to get. They've announced now that quantitative easing number 3, QE3, is about to get underway. That's one of the things we're looking for as a precursor to a contrived economic collapse. That could spiral out of control real quick. It'll appear to be a spontaneous event when, in fact, it's a controlled and contrived event. And we're looking, if that would happen, we're looking for that to be happening the 3rd week of October. So it's a list of things that we're paying attention to and trading information on, my confidential sources in the government and Department of Homeland Security and the military. And we get this information, we compare notes, we verify and vet the information to the best of our ability before we go public with it. The stuff we don't go public with is very scary, and if it can't be confirmed, we simply don't talk about it publicly, Michael.
Absolutely, and and that's one of the things about Planet X that a lot of people have had a problem with. is the not being able to absolutely confirm it. There's a lot of evidence that points towards it, and then there's a lot of stuff that points towards maybe something else going on, like HAARP. So it's really hard to determine when there is earthquakes and such, what could be causing that. And I'm one of the ones that pull towards maybe a little of both, the cycle that we're going through and HAARP. I think HAARP helps out.
Well, HAARP can do some things. People give HAARP more credit than it's due. HAARP can do some things some of the time in terms of manipulating weather. It can't manipulate all weather all the time. It's the world's most powerful radio frequency transmitter, and it can be direct that energy to pretty much any place they want. And what it does is heat up the atmosphere. And it can, in fact, manipulate some weather some of the time. That's certainly a provable fact. I don't believe it can cause earthquakes. I've seen no evidence of it. I don't believe it can create a volcano. HAARP gets blamed or given credit for things that there's no evidence that it can do.
Yeah, absolutely. I hear a lot of things. I've heard about the earthquakes and so on, and I'm not sure. I guess, anything's possible. I can't say it's true or not true, but I do know that they do use HAARP, and other countries have it as well, and they have these little weather wars, it seems.
Oh, yeah. Well, weather is a powerful tool. If you can manipulate weather, you've got a lot of power. Russia's version of HAARP is not nearly as large as ours. When Russia built their own, we doubled our size, and I guess we wanted to have the biggest and best. So.
Yeah. What else is new, right?
I know that's just the American way, right? And I wasn't aware of anybody but us in Russia having HAARP type devices. I wouldn't be surprised if China has one of their own. England or Germany or France may have one. It can accomplish a lot of things, and it could do some good things. It could bring rain, perhaps, to an area that needs rain. It probably has that capability also.
Well, they're slacking off then, because we've had a lot of drought in this country. The farmland has been affected terribly, and there's quite a few out there who are suggesting we're going to have food crises soon.
Well, the food crisis in this country is going to be dramatic price increases, which will cause people to cut back on their discretionary spending as far as middle-class families. The truly poor, they're going to be hurt by this. There's no doubt about that. And these third-world countries is going to lead to malnourishment and opportunistic diseases that take advantage of malnourished people. So it's going to be a lot of human misery because of these droughts and the dramatic increases in food prices.
But do you think that these droughts and different things that we're going through right now, do you think that this is part of the plan? World domination?
I think they're making use of it. The Gulf Stream having stopped 2 years ago, June 12, 2010, is what's affecting the jet stream, and the jet stream, of course, is what's causing the drought. So they certainly incorporate anything that they can into their pre-existing plans to take advantage of it. I think they're certainly doing that.
Okay, and I guess last but not least, John, chemtrails. I'm sure that you hear a lot about chemtrails. I know.
Oh, I get the same emails you do, and it's a tough topic to address with any real closure. There's just tons and tons of speculation about what they're spraying and why they're spraying it. I tend to try to stay away from that topic because it's a bottomless pit of speculation is what it is, Michael, with no resolution.
Understandable.
Bottomless pit of speculation with no resolution.
Well, and I agree to a sense, I guess, but one thing's for sure, it's happening. That I know. I see it every day.
It's definitely happening. There's no doubt about that. It's an observable, provable phenomenon. But I've yet to see evidence that I would regard as clear and convincing as to the two questions: what they're spraying and why they're spraying it.
That's right. So, I'll agree with you there. And, some people think they have the answers. I think it's a combination of reasons that they're doing it. I think one of them is to control the food. Maybe another is to, killing off live vegetation, and then you get these Monsanto seeds. And, hey, we've got the aluminum-resistant seeds, so buy from us. I think that could be one of the reasons. But hopefully we'll find out. Yeah, I hope we find out before it's too late, John. And
I hope we do. I know if Monsanto can make a buck off of it, they will.
Oh yeah, absolutely. John, if there's any information you'd like to get out there before we close out, I want to thank you especially for jumping on with me on such short notice tonight.
Well, no problem, Michael. You know, I've been a guest on your show a number of times. It's always fun. It's late for me. I go to bed at 9 and get up at 4:45. So,
oh, wow.
but it's fun to be with you. You know, my show will be on Republic Broadcasting tomorrow morning at 0700 Central Time, and I invite everybody to listen.
All right, great. We've got you linked up over at latenightinthemidlands.com. John, keep up the great work that you do.
Thank you, Michael. Have a good evening. Appreciate it.
Thank you. You too. Good night. All right, everybody, that's John Moore, and we've got he keeps talking about pole shift. I mean, is that something you see coming, or should we be worried about these wars even more?
That's what the Navy sees coming. That's why the Navy has been conducting classified briefings since 1979. In these classified briefings, Michael, and you and I have talked about this before, they advise their sailors that when they retire, they should consider relocating to the Arkansas, Missouri Ozarks to be away from these oceans, because the oceans will come out of their basins. There's only one phenomenon that we're aware of that can cause that to happen worldwide, and that would be a pole shift. Now, a more localized event, say, for example, the east coast of North America, that could be caused by a different event. That would be a massive rock and dirt slide in the Canary Islands, which is another major concern for people on the east coast of North America. There's currently, as we speak, on September 13th, a massive swarm of earthquakes taking place in the Canary Islands that, by the way, the United States Geological Survey is blocking out. They're not publishing that swarm of earthquakes. So,
really?
a pole shift is a very clear and present danger, absolutely.
Yeah, because, you know, I've been checking into it, looking into it, and I get people who send me reports and email all the time, every day. And, you know, there's a lot of concern over the pickup in earthquakes and the volcanic activity. And, you know, I have people who are telling me they're getting visions that they should get off of the coast. And now we just had another asteroid that's passing by close to Earth. And, you know, is there any outside interference that could be helping along with this, or is this just an Earth cycle that's happening?
Well, it is an Earth cycle, and there is an outside influence. Both things are true. The outside influence, of course, is the 10th planet, also called Nibiru, the destroyer wormwood. As it gets deeper into our solar system, it causes more severe problems with volcanism, seismic activity, bizarre, strange weather events. The Gulf Stream stopping was initially precipitated by these events, and the final thing that stopped the Gulf Stream, of course, was the British petroleum oil spill, which stopped a very fragile and very much at-risk Gulf Stream in June 12, 2010. So yes, the outside influence is the 10th planet interacting with our planet and the sun and all the other planets as well.
I see, and I've been getting reports from people as well about strange smells in California.
Right, sulfur dioxide. Right, the salt in the sea. The government's trying to convince people it's dead fish. Well, a dead fish smell may carry a couple of miles at the most, but it's not going to carry 125, 150 miles, which is what the reports are saying.
Amazing. All right, so what do you think all this is going to start coming to a head? I've been hearing November. What do you think?
Well, there's, as far as the Earth changes, I'm not going to make any predictions about a date. We'll see incremental increases in the number and severity of all these events. And when it comes to man-made events, we're looking at the third week of October as a possible time for a contrived economic collapse. The communists that support Hussein Obama are very concerned that he won't win an election, and they may contrive an economic collapse that will lead to martial law and a calling off of the election to make sure that their man stays in office.
Yeah, I've been a little concerned about that myself. Do you think they'll also bring this on by with more war in the Middle East?
Well, beginning day before yesterday, things really heated up dramatically in the Middle East, as we all know. Once again, certain people would like to see a war, and they apparently published this film knowing full well that once it got turned loose in the Middle East, it would drive these people absolutely bonkers crazy, because that's who they are. It's part of their religious belief to go bonkers crazy when somebody makes fun of Muhammad. So that's very predictable, and that's exactly what happened. When we're living the consequences of it now. The headlines on Drudge right now, Michael, are very disturbing, that the State Department had 48 hours notice before the embassy was attacked in Libya, and they did nothing. That's inexcusable. And once again, as we've known the past more than 30 years, the Marine Guards were unarmed. They had weapons but had no ammunition.
Wow. Now, some people think that was a setup, or, that maybe the United States set that up somehow just to have more excuses to go and maybe bomb more. What do you think?
Well, possible.
You think,
I mean, all these wars have been contrived going back to the Spanish-American War, so why not contrive one more on top of all the wars we've had since the 1890s with the Spanish-American War? The last time the U.S. military defended this country was the War of 1812. All these other wars have done nothing to defend the United States of America. They have enriched the bankers and caused a lot of death and misery, but none of these wars have defended the United States.
I would agree.